It's Fernando Ruiz Art.
Hey everybody, thanks for tuning in, and you are looking at a drawing of DC Comics' magical superhero Dr. Fate from the Justice Society of America. Now, if you've been following me on Instagram and Facebook, and on Instagram, just follow me under Fernando Ruiz, everybody, all one word. And on Facebook, it's just my name, Fernando Ruiz. I've been doing the Legionnaires, the Legionnaire of the day. I've been drawing those for a while. Laid off of those because I think I went through most of the Legion. Still had a few of the Legion allies to go, but I've very recently started on the Justice Society of America. So I've drawn the Golden Age Flash, the Spectre last week, and I've got a Dr. Fate in the works for this week. So he's in the middle of being inked, and when I ink him, we'll color him and post him on all across social media. So be on the lookout. Another guy I've got in the works is an old favorite from the 1980s, the Blue Devil. Who remembers the Blue Devil? I really liked his book. I think his series lasted about 30 issues, a little bit past 30 issues. But it was a fun book, and he was a fun character. I dread what's become of him in modern times. God knows, after everything all went to hell in the 90s, who knows what the hell these modern writers and artists have done with him. So, but here he is in his prime, Blue Devil, one of my favorites. Okay, so today, in recent videos, I've been doing full body shots of many of the Archie characters, and I thought I would continue with that today. So far, I've done Archie himself. I've done Betty, Jughead. I want to do a Veronica, but today I figured, why do Veronica when I could do the Ultra Veronica, who is Cheryl Blossom? Now, Cheryl, if you're unaware, she is Archie's redheaded romantic interest. And if you watch the TV show Riverdale, you have my sympathies. But you will know the character Cheryl because she's pretty prominent on that show. So tackling a female figure like Cheryl helps us actually is good to bring up a couple of points regarding figure drawing. One of the key things about figure drawing are there are three major lines you really want to pay attention to. Once you've got a head down, one of the major lines is that spine. And that spine, you rarely, especially on a female figure, if you want a more feminine stance, you rarely want to do just a vertical straight line. You always want to give it a little bit of that S curve that every spine should have, and maybe even exaggerate it a little more. So that spine, and just let it trail off. You don't have to take it all the way or be super anatomically correct about it. So aside from the spine, we also want to pay attention to the shoulder line and the hip line, or the waistline, the pelvic line. So the shoulder line, of course, is where the shoulders would go. If we were to draw an imaginary line across the shoulders, that's where they would go. And the pelvic line, of course, would be across the pelvis. Now notice I have them tilted. You never want to draw them both straight across, because that leads to a stiff figure. You want to tilt both lines, both the shoulder line and the pelvic line. And if you tilt one way, okay, see this one is kind of slanting upward to my right. You want to tilt the other one the opposite way, where this one is slanting downward to the right. That makes for a more balanced figure. When those two lines are parallel, that's a figure that's not distributing their weight properly. So what that means is that figure is probably going to go over. They're falling over. Okay. Now I'm scribbling down the figure, as much of her as I can get. As I've shown before, I don't want to get caught up in too many details until I have a nice figure to play with. Her arms will come this way. And Cheryl, as I said, she is like the Ultra Veronica. She is a relatively newer character, and I say relatively because she was created in the 80s by the great Dan DeCarlo. As opposed to much of the Archie cast, which were created way back in the 40s. So compared to Jughead, Archie, Veronica, and the rest, Cheryl is the new kid in town. And she was always made out to be, she was always the bad girl. If you needed a story with a bad girl and you didn't want to go that bad with Veronica, you brought in Cheryl. And Cheryl was also a very curvaceous girl. So what I'm doing is I'm trying to push those curves as much as I can. And that's how we used to do it back in the when we were drawing her in the comics. We would try to push those curves because that was the appeal. But of course, these are kids' comics, so we don't want to go too far. Don't want to get too crazy. So as I lay in her face, and Cheryl always has these seductive cat-shaped eyes, these heavy eyelids, giving her that sultry look. I like to give her the same nose as Betty and Veronica. Sometimes I've seen her drawn with sort of that, just a little curved line, but I like that same. I think the Betty and Veronica nose is a little cuter. So going in, giving her face, and give her hair. And Cheryl traditionally has these curved bangs in the front, and the rest of her hair is just long, hanging down a little bit more than shoulder length. Now, Cheryl, and really any girl or any character that you're drawing that is wearing armor, cloaks, robes, anything like that, you always want to draw them as though they're naked first. You always want to draw them without any clothes on. So Cheryl is the same way. I want to draw a nice figure of Cheryl first. Okay, I'm going to tighten up her arms, her pelvis. The other hand is on the other side of her hip. Maybe she's wearing like a short sleeve tee. You know what? Maybe we'll go a little higher with that sleeve. Maybe a little low cut, because Cheryl is a bit of a show off. Sometimes too, I also like to give Cheryl that little divot on her chin, a little dimple on her chin, kind of like Mary Jane Watson from Spider-Man. The way John Romita would draw her with dimples. A bit more of the dimples in the cheeks. So, now as I come down to her legs, what I want to do, I'm going to give Cheryl a little bit of a skirt. And this way, having drawn her through, okay, having drawn her all the way through the figure without the skirt, the skirt will sit on her more naturally this way. When I add the skirt, it will cling to her curves, it will billow out, and yeah, she's wearing a short skirt. Like I said, Cheryl likes to show it off. That's the kind of girl she is. Cheryl was actually considered a little too racy, and so she was kind of retired for a number of years. She wasn't used in the books because she was considered a little too wild. I don't know what prompted that feeling, but just want to trim down her calves a little bit. So I'm going to erase those. There we go. I'm going to give her some heels. Maybe on this leg we're not going to see the back of the heel. She's kind of sidestepping there. Yep. Give her knees. And Cheryl is just about done. So yeah, she was retired for a number of years. But she was brought back in the mid-90s with Archie's big crossover series, Love Showdown. And they brought her in. Now I'm going to straighten out that sleeve again. Maybe give Cheryl some bling, a few bracelets. And that becomes the hot, seductive Cheryl Blossom with a skirt. Got to cover a little bit on skirts. I want to do another video on things like capes and cloaks and how they should rest correctly on the figure. So that is Cheryl Blossom. What do you think? Am I doing Cheryl justice? If I am, please let me know in the comments below. So that's Cheryl. And let's take a good look at her. There we go. Yep. And of course, yeah, now I could take away some of these lines that I did before, clean her up a little. And that's Cheryl. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed this. If you did, please click like. Please let me know what you think in the comments below. Please let me know what Archie characters do you want me to do. Or any characters really. I'm always open to anything. I've got requests for Veronica. I've got one for a Mr. Weatherby. You want to see a Mr. Weatherby? How we do the fat people of Riverdale? Okay, that's it for this one. Thanks a lot for tuning in, everybody. And I will see you in the next video. Keep drawing, everybody. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye now.